winter that almost broke the Soviet Union. December 1978 was coming to an end. Soviet citizens were preparing to celebrate the new year, decorating trees, setting holiday tables, chilling bottles of champagne. No one suspected that nature was already preparing a blow the country had not seen in decades. A winter without snow. A winter without snow. That winter had started strangely. There was almost no snow. Village residents looked at the bare fields with unease. They knew that without a snow cover, winter crops were defenseless against frost. If the cold came, the following year's harvest would be in danger. The cold came. Yunnan Bubban Bills, the Arctic strikes. On December 28th, a powerful anticyclone formed over the Kara Sea. Arctic air began moving southward, first sweeping across the northern regions of the country, then reaching the European part. Meteorologists call this phenomenon an ultra-polar intrusion. It sounds technical. In reality, it means that breathing outside becomes painful and touching metal burns your skin. Temperature readings collapsed within hours. Leningrad dropped to -39 degrees Celsius. Moscow, -37. The Moscow region, -45. Arkhangelsk, -43. In the Ural Mountains and across the Kostroma and Chelyabinsk regions, -50. In the Komi Republic, instruments recorded -58 degrees Celsius. Baus Aniatauk, tham silmi pad muntium than on they turn down publics than minis and nution is bound, nu namis and mel, than mianani beaminsid this dupun, minis and my minis and pion on the menound, than the minis down your mound, than mianani naminanis am nani minand, than nanyam downed. These are minatskund, nan naniam public standa. Climatologists agreed. Nothing like this had occurred in the European part of the Soviet Union in at least 50 years. Some drew comparisons to the brutal winters of 1940 and 1941. The Russian-language immigrant newspaper Novoye Russkoye Slovo, published in New York, dedicated a full article to the Soviet cold snap, seriously discussing the possibility of a new ice age approaching. Maindif Sabian Baron, Gendif Anild Brantandif. Television and radio broadcasts carried messages unusual for the holiday season. Authorities recommended that parents keep children indoors. Doctors warned that alcohol was especially dangerous in such cold. It creates a false sense of warmth, while the body continues to lose heat rapidly. In areas where temperatures fell below -50, working hours at factories and plants were reduced. The urban infrastructure began to fail. Pipes had been designed with a safety margin, but not for this. In Ulyanovsk, where temperatures reached -45, central heating radiators burst. Residents sat in freezing apartments for an entire week, while emergency crews replaced the broken sections. In Moscow, entire neighborhoods lost electricity on New Year's Eve. Water mains cracked beneath the sidewalks. People survived however they could. Gas stoves were turned on and left running. Electric heaters were pulled down from storage shelves. At the same time, radio broadcasts urged citizens to conserve electricity. The walls of apartment buildings were covered in frost from the inside, meaning temperatures near exterior walls had fallen below zero in the living spaces themselves. Tens of thousands of bottles of champagne and soda burst on the unheated warehouse shelves. The holiday tables of millions of families ended up far more modest than planned. In many areas, bread disappeared from stores. Delivery trucks simply could not reach them on the icebound roads. Passenger trains stood motionless for hours due to broken overhead power lines. Lost on the Volga. On December 29th, a group of schoolchildren from the city of Pavlodar arrived in Tatarstan. They had planned a ski expedition along the frozen Volga River, 120 kilometers to the city of Kazan, following historical sites connected to Lenin. The route had been carefully planned, the equipment had been checked, their teacher, who led the group, was experienced. No one had accounted for the fact that nature would change everything within hours. Already on the trail, the frost intensified to the point where moving forward became impossible. The teacher made a decision. Two of the strongest students would turn back to seek help. The rest would wait. The two messengers trudged through the snow, their strength fading with every step. The cold locked their muscles. The blizzard pulled them off course, but they were lucky. They stumbled upon an abandoned forester's cabin. That is where they took shelter. On the morning of December 30th, a local tractor driver passing by noticed footprints and looked inside. He found the half-frozen students alive. The driver immediately reported to the police. Two officers, Alexander Shliakov and Evgeny Togashov, set out on snowmobiles. They located the remaining members of the group in separate clusters, gathering everyone at a ravine, where they built a large fire. Once the group was assembled, they were evacuated to the village of Dolgaya Poliana. One member of the expedition could not be saved.
Fire at the nuclear plant.
But the most dangerous event of that winter was unfolding not in a field or in a frozen apartment. It was happening at the Belyarsk nuclear power plant in the Urals. By that point, the Sverdlovsk region had been living in Arctic conditions for several days. -47 outside. Burst pipes had filled city streets with thick fog. Steam from hot water froze instantly in the air. Everything was coated in a layer of ice. In the night of December 31st, as the country prepared to ring in the new year, a fire broke out at the station. The reinforced concrete structures of the turbine hall could not withstand the extreme temperature difference. Inside the plant it was warm. Machinery was running, turbines were humming. Outside it was nearly -50. A massive beam gave way under the stress and crashed onto the generator of the first power unit. A steam pipe was punctured. Transformer oil ignited. The fire spread through cable tunnels. Hydrogen cylinders were stored next to the turbines. By the time firefighting crews arrived, the main body of the power block was engulfed in flames. They had several water tanker trucks and one truck loaded with foam for fighting oil fires. The hoses froze to the ground. Water inside them solidified before it could reach the nozzle.
Fighting the fire on energized cables was lethal.
But cutting the power supply meant shutting down the reactor before it could be done safely. Firefighters used a technique called the throw stream method, directing water at burning surfaces without making contact with live electrical components.
Plant personnel continued working in gas masks. The reactor kept running.
Outside the perimeter, 300 buses and several train convoys were standing by, prepared for the emergency evacuation of nearby towns and settlements. The fire was extinguished after 20 hours. The catastrophe did not happen. The long aftermath. After the new year, the frost began to ease. By calendar standards, the extreme cold lasted only a few days, but the consequences stretched on for months. Agriculture suffered severe losses. A snowless winter, combined with devastating frost, destroyed orchards across the country. In 1979, Soviet citizens went without plums, cherries, apples and pears. Municipal services spent months repairing heating and water supply networks that had been torn apart by the cold. The winter of 1978 to 1979 was a reminder of how thin the line is between ordinary life and catastrophe, and how much depends on those who, in the darkest and coldest moment, do not retreat to warmth, but stay where they are needed.